Hi everyone. This is Nilesh Maheshwari, founder of Emorphis Health. Today we are going to dive into a very impactful topic, which is going to impact millions, which is cancer. Just recently, I came across statistics from American Cancer Society that 2 million new cancer cases are going to be reported in just in United States in 2024, which is quite a staggering number, and which translate to around over 5,000 cases every day. And another thought-provoking fact that cancer isn't a single disease; it is actually a collection of over 200, and it makes it a very complex puzzle. But thankfully, there are treatment advancements which are significantly progressing in this field, which are taking over the fight with cancer. And so to discuss in further detail, let me call upon Joan in today's podcast. Joan, welcome to the podcast, and please introduce yourself.
Yes, so I'm Joan Forte. I am the Chief Clinical Officer at a company called Navvisa. Navvisa provides virtual nurse navigation through certified oncology nurse caregivers who work with both patients and caregivers. We currently are in the employer market, so we serve people as part of their benefits, so there's no cost to them. And our goal really is to be there in between all the touch points that they have with their healthcare system to fill the gaps and to ease those transitions and give them a clinical expert kind of in their back pocket to help them get through the journey. So, and my background, I actually had 35 years at a center of excellence out here in California in a nurse executive positions, director of nursing. So I come from a very traditional healthcare background into the startup world, which gives me kind of a unique perspective, I think.
Excellent. I think you blend both the worlds where you have hands-on experience working in the field with the patients, and now with the technology company as well. In your experience, how can technology be effectively utilized to enhance the patient journey in cancer care?
So, I think there's so many creative ways. And as I mentioned at Navvisa, we're trying to support the cancer patient's journey also in unique ways, right? Novel ways. And I think maybe by providing a few examples of how Navvisa uses tech, I can kind of answer that question for you. So in the beginning, we do a very comprehensive nursing assessment. And in that process, the nurses determine what the unique needs are of this patient or caregiver and then creates this individualized care plan. But the first thing we have to do is make sure that this patient is receiving the standard of care, the gold standard of care, right? And that they're seeing the right physician. And so technology puts all of that at our fingertips. We can easily determine what the standard of care for one of these unique 200 diseases, as you mentioned, is. Every cancer is different, actually, even if it falls into a category. All of our own personal characteristics make that cancer different for us. So we can quickly determine whether they are getting the best care possible. And many times they are not being seen by the right physician. So technology allows us to access resources and get them connected to someone that they can see quickly and in their neighborhood if possible, right? We do a lot of education. Health literacy is a big issue for people. As you said, cancer is so complex. It's even difficult for us as clinicians to keep up with the latest treatments and modalities, right? And so the tech allows us to keep current across all these cancer types, even the more rare ones. But it also, allows us to create kind of this knowledge hub within our technology that helps us share that knowledge, right? Because every learner is different. We learn in different ways. So we now have a variety of methods and modules that we can use, formats that we can use to best meet their needs. We look at barriers to care and provide resource connections. Again, there are thousands of resources available to cancer patients, but the challenge is finding them, right? Patients rarely find them. And even as clinicians, it can be difficult. I mean, we're nationwide, so how can we know what's out there? Again, that's where tech comes in for us, right? It really allows us to search very specifically. Um, we triage symptoms and side effects for patients. We can often keep patients out of the emergency room, which is their only alternative usually because they can't reach their clinical team quickly. But tech allows us to quickly consult with our internal experts. So if I'm managing a patient who has a side effect I'm not familiar with, I can very quickly get in touch with someone who can give me some expert advice. So, and tech can actually even be a solution for patients. We recently had a patient who was suffering from nausea as a result of the chemotherapy she was on, and the physician was going to hospitalize her to stabilize her weight. She had a little 2-year-old at home. She was a single mom. This was going to be very traumatic for her and the baby. And the nurse had learned from other patients and from the evidence, we know that distraction and music can actually be very effective in combating nausea. And so the recommendation was actually for her to put a headset on and listen to music when she was trying to eat. So that ability to make the music so much part of her experience allowed her to overcome the nausea. It was such an intense distraction, right? Because it was so present for her through technology. So it can even be a clinical solution.
Oh, that is fantastic, and I think learning from different patients' experience and applying it to a unique situation like this, it makes a patient experience very good, and they are like very feeling very positive about the outcomes or the treatment plan there. This brings one more question, that with the personalized communication which the technology is providing, how do you see that it is actually improving the patient engagement, and how much they are enabling, how the technology is enabling the adherence of the treatment plan?
Yeah, definitely is impacting those aspects very positively. And again, using Navvisa as an example, so we actually start by matching the patient or the caregiver, we serve both, with a nurse. And we do that. We're looking for a nurse that shares demographics, language, culture, lifestyle, and who specializes in their specific cancer, right? So obviously that can't be done manually. So we use tech to match the two as best we can. And that really sets them up for successful communication. And it's a basis for building the trust, which impacts engagement, right? If we trust our provider, we're going to listen, we're going to learn from them, we're going to follow their advice. So that's how we start. And tech really enables us to start well. I think, the ability to communicate, the platform really allows us to communicate in the way that best serves the patient. They can text us or video chat or call us or, email, whatever works for them, or a combination. And because of the tech, we can provide very fast, personalized responses. We usually respond within an hour of receiving any communication, if not sooner. And that makes people feel very heard and valued. And, when they can get a quick answer, they're going to stick with the plan of care. They're not going to stop taking their medication if they've learned that what they're experiencing is okay, right? And, that same technology then allows us to provide this ongoing support and coaching so we can track important clinical events. We can find out, if somebody's starting chemo, the nurse gets a reminder so we can send resources out that help prepare them to go to chemo, again, helping them comply with the plan of care. And, we even track personal events, right? A birthday or an anniversary. And that helps people feel engaged with their provider. It feels very personal, right? When we have video chats, we often involve both the caregiver and the patient. That caregiver serves a huge role in that person's compliance and ability to follow the plan of care, because the care provider is often the one who's giving the medications or preparing the meals. We are able to attend physician appointments virtually. We go with our patient on their phone. And so after that visit, we debrief with them, because patients the research shows we get about 10% out of that doctor's visit, right? We have so many emotional things going on. So again, we can really enforce that plan of care, because when people understand the plan of care fully, they're more likely to follow it. So all those things are examples of how, we could not do these things without the technology that we have.
Okay. So beyond the communication interaction with the patient, are there any other tools and technology or platforms is Navvisa using to enhance the patient engagement?
So it's definitely one of our main goals to empower patients and caregivers, especially when they are in this role that traditionally feels very disempowering, very vulnerable, right? We do with our patients, not for or to them. So tech allows us to join them in their world instead of expecting them to come into ours. That right away makes a huge difference in terms of people's feeling empowered, right? There's not that power differential that they feel when they come into traditional care. So much does revolve around communication when you talk about empowerment, but all the tech I've described that enables knowledge transfer, all of that, of course, serves to empower patients and kind of level the playing field. It helps us demystify healthcare so that patients can navigate it using kind of our inside knowledge, right? So many times they don't understand how the system works. It's complex. But maybe one example of where we use technology that isn't exactly directly connected to communication is that one of the things we do is really help people make decisions in the decision support process, right? These days, there are often many ways of treating a cancer, and sometimes the physician will give the patient the choice because they both may have similar outcomes, but the journey is very different, right? And depending on the individual, one may appeal more than another. So we actually use tech to project a possible treatment trajectory when we have different options. So we can kind of help a patient think through what it would look like if they chose this route. What are the possible downsides, the side effects? How will it impact their daily life? So tech assists us with that, which is fantastic. And, as I said, the healthcare environment itself is just so disempowering. It's like being in a foreign country and, you even have a foreign language being spoken. So I think the most powerful part of technology when it comes to empowering people is this piece about bringing virtual care through technology into their homes and their own environments where they feel a sense of agency, right?
Okay. So, well, while the technology plays a very important role in the Navvisa's delivery of care, how do you make sure that Navvisa addresses the emotional and social well-being of patient alongside the medical needs?
So I think for us, and I think this is my best advice, you have to really start by keeping things in the right order, right? So many startups are focused on their tech platform, right? We differentiate ourselves. We say we're a relationship based model, clinical model that is supported by a tech platform. So that's the order we approach things in, right? The tech makes us more efficient. It allows the nurse more face to face time. And that's emphasized in all our marketing and baked into our mission and culture. And, it's even reflected in our executive decision making process. So, as the chief clinical officer, I have equal status to our CEO or COO because this is a clinical company, right? I didn't even mention the CTO, you noticed, right? So, it's very interesting how we kind of approach it. And for us, this advanced nursing practice model we've created drives the tech, not the other way around. Every decision we make starts with the question, will this facilitate human interaction and relationship, or will it harm it, right? And if it is risking that, how do we mitigate that? We need this tech, how can we make it work, right? And we stay true to these tenets of patient family-centered care, which are respect, choice, support, flexibility, providing information, building on strengths, empowerment, and collaboration. So we measure everything we do against those principles, right? I think, having your true north that you are always looking back to guide your decisions is so important. And then I think finally for us, which it's kind of ironic. I think in tech, it's long been the standard of care to get end user feedback, right? but it's still very novel in healthcare. One of the things that I did at Stanford was to bring in patients and family members to advise us, to tell us what the experience was like, to tell us what we needed to fix, to tell us what was working. So at Navvisa, we use our patients and caregivers to help us evaluate our care and our processes on a regular basis, because that's who we're trying to serve, right? And that keeps the emphasis in the right place.
Okay, that's great. That you are also taking 360-degree feedback from the patient as well, so that the platform can be enhanced over the period of time as per the expectation and experience of the patients and caregiver, which is phenomenal. So, apart from the tech, there is a lot of emotional and well-being support is required. And are you training the caregivers or nurses alongside of these particular guidelines?
So, we know it's impossible to separate these aspects, right? Science proves all of this is intrinsically linked. How we feel mentally, emotionally affects how we do clinically, right? And, one of the reasons why our care is based on a nursing model is that nursing has always been based on whole person care. It's a very holistic practice, unlike medicine or some of the other clinical aspects. So we start, when we're doing that initial assessment, we look at what kind of social supports an individual has. And we help them understand how important that support circle is going to be to them. Sometimes people are reluctant to ask their loved ones to do things for them, but you know, those people who care about you want to provide support and they want guidance about what that looks like, right? So we really help people not feel guilty or bad about using the ones that love them to support them. And for those with limited support, we connect them to support groups or peer to peer support, either locally if we can or nationally. And we continue to check in. Are their social needs and support needs being met? We also assess and monitor, just as we monitor their medical needs, we're looking at their levels of stress and distress and anxiety and fear all along. We use both formal tools to assess that as well as kind of the nurse's intuition, again, because they are going to be with one nurse for maybe 6 months, maybe 2 years. The cancer journey can be long. They have such a trusting relationship. The nurse really gets a feel for this individual and knows how they respond when they're in distress, right? So we refer patients that have more extensive need. Sometimes someone is really dealing with a significant depression or may have some overlying mental health issues. We refer out to them, but we also stay there as that touch point to helping them support. So, for most patients and caregivers, honestly, having someone there very available who really understands what it's like to have cancer and who has the time to listen and can be reached in under an hour when they need it, that makes all the difference for people. So, our availability and just, being there at the right time when people are feeling it. Sometimes people have a very simple question. It's a short text, right? But it's something that would keep them up overnight, or for the 2 days it would take their physician to get back, they'd be stressing about it, right? We can ease that distress so quickly. So all of those things, I think, are just baked into our model.
Excellent. And I think there are very small things which makes a lot of difference in the overall patient care.
Huge.
Yeah. So now looking ahead, what are your thoughts on the potential emerging technologies like AI, telehealth, and how they are can be utilized in personalizing and optimizing the cancer care?
Yeah, traditional care just really wasn't built with these goals in mind, certainly to provide good care, but it wasn't about personalizing care when these structures were created, right? So our systems, unfortunately, have been built around clinicians and institutions, not centered on the patient or the caregiver. So, we are really struggling right now to kind of retrofit them to be personal. But, any one of us that's had a recent physician appointment, it's impossible in 15 minutes. And, 3 times you have to repeat why you're there. This does not feel like a personal, individualized experience. So So, as a new structure, really, telehealth plays an enormous role, right, in personalizing and optimizing cancer care. As I mentioned earlier, I think by bringing care into a person's home and into their environment, we make healthcare so much more accessible for people, right? We have long expected in traditional care that stressed, sick, and vulnerable people are going to come to us, right? They're going to take the bus, they're going to drive 3 hours, they're, all the things that you have to do to get into an organization. And it is just not realistic, right? So they wind up with suboptimal care. I think also, telehealth just gives us so many opportunities to individualize and personalize care. Some of the examples that I gave, and then also to provide continuity because traditional care is so fragmented. You see one provider and then you go see another provider, and sometimes they're not communicating. You get different stories. So I think, we need telehealth and AI to help us both reach these communities that we failed with traditional care and then to extend the reach of clinicians, right? We're simply not going to have enough doctors and nurses to serve our population in the coming years. So I think it has to be developed. AI has to be developed thoughtfully and just like I've described, really guided by central principles and goals, and never intended to replace the human touch, but to extend it, right? To make it more effective. I think many clinicians fear AI. I think a lot of people are actually fighting it. And I think that's such a mistake, right? Because there's this fear it's going to make it more impersonal. Well, then we need to not turn our backs to it. We need to embrace it and we need to help shape it, right? Because it is our future. There's no denying.
Obviously, yeah, of course. Like AI is here and already in is part of our day-to-day life, and it is going to grow more deeper and deeper in everything, whatever we do. Um, Not just healthcare, but in everything, anything and everything,
Yes,
whatever we do, AI is going
yes,
to be impacting the way we are working. So
yes,
definitely, and we have worked on telehealth platform specifically for second opinion in oncology space, where patients
yes,
can connect to different doctors and take second advice and with their family, and they can understand the impact of different options, etc. So
yes.
definitely, telehealth provides a lot of opportunities and different touch points for the patients, and it is as you said it right. Care is coming to home rather than the patient is going to the facility. And some of
Which
the
is a
times
really
the
good thing,
oh yes,
right?
definitely, and the critically ill patients and the chronic patients need that kind of facility, because for them going out of their comfort from their home is always a stressful experience. Rather than that, if they can get it something at where they are, it is always beneficial.
You mentioned when we began some of the statistics around cancer, and definitely more and more people are surviving cancer, right? But what it is creating is a much larger population of people with chronic health needs, right? Because for many, the cancer doesn't go away, or the after effects of their treatment and cancer stay with them. So we're seeing a growing population of people who have these chronic needs, right? For whom coming to an organization is very difficult.
Okay. So, one last question, do you see any challenges the providers are facing in adopting the technology?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of challenges, and those of you on the tech side are running into them with us, I'm sure. So, I think first of all, to successfully adopt tech and to problem solve, right, you really have to understand the problem. And, my experience, I did consulting as well after I left Stanford. And so I've been exposed to a lot of organizations. And sometimes we don't understand the problem we're trying to solve very well. So the first thing really is making sure that we know what we're trying to fix before we bring the tech in. And as I mentioned earlier, the perspective of the CEO or the physician isn't enough. We need the perspective of the people that we're trying to serve. So the patients and the caregivers need to be part of that analysis. I think second, for providers, there's so many solutions out there, right? We're all trying to be the startup that fixes everything, and the providers are looking for that magic, right? So there's kind of this glut of solutions. So that can be very overwhelming to providers, right? And sometimes we see providers that are adopting this kind of shotgun approach where they're just grabbing whatever the latest thing that was pitched to them rather than having a comprehensive plan that is, based on strategic thinking, how we're going to fix this. Because one of the things about healthcare, it reminds me of the old children's song about how all the bones in the body are connected. You impact one thing in a healthcare system, you may have a horrible effect on something downstream, right? Everything is connected. So you can't just fix this. You have to look at how everything works together. Healthcare looks very different now than it did even 5 years ago, right? We have adopted a lot of technology, but for many people, the system still feels disconnected and alienating. And, I think for providers, it's much easier to just buy a new app than to do all of this work or to restructure how care is provided. And it can make us think we're making progress when we bring in the latest thing. But it's kind of like putting new paint on a leaky roof, right? It looks prettier, but it's still going to let the rain in. So the innovations aren't the problem. There's many amazing ones. It's that the health system, I think, is relying too heavily on them without building this strong provider-patient relationship. You can't ignore that. They have to go hand in hand, right? We know this from talking to patients. We know it's one of the reasons why we're losing physicians and nurses is because it's become impersonal for them as well. So we need to fix the roof and paint it, right, to make it work. So, these technologies like electronic health records and mobile health apps, they can really further the depths of a solid provider-patient bond, but they can't replace it, right? So on its own, they can de-emphasize the value of human contact and relationship. But technology is a major tool for us in the process of making this major system overhaul, right? And it's the biggest challenge we have in healthcare is how do we do both of these things in concert?
Sure. So, summing up, I think we need to actually look the whole healthcare system holistically and then look at it in providing the solution without losing the human interaction. Because technology cannot replace the human to human interaction, patient provider connect, nurse and patient connect, and but the technology can be a very big conduit of providing or delivering the best and optimized healthcare to the patient, and it can be well connected to the whole ecosystem.
Yes. Yes. They are not exclusive. They are very well paired if they're done
Oh yes,
thoughtfully.
right. So, thank you, Joan. It was very nice interacting with you, and look forward to connecting you again. And this was a very insightful episode of Healthcare Musings, and so we are signing off from here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.